The Green Bay Packers lead the NFL in turnovers. Is it the players? Is it the coaching? And most importantly, is it sustainable?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This Green Bay Packers team, as I'm sure you've heard by now, has as many interceptions through 3 games as they had all of last season. They lead the league in interceptions. They lead the league in turnovers. And for the Leap yesterday, I posed the question, who gets the lion's share of the credit? Is it the way that Brian Gutekunst has constructed this roster? Is it the changes Jeff Hafley has made? Is it the players who have improved in some area or another? Or is it that they've played some teams who like to turn the ball over? And I wish I had a great sports radio, sports podcasting answer. I'm like, it is this, and damn it, this is the take, and here we go. Sorry, guys. It's all of those things. It truly is everything. But if I'm going to boil it down to one most important thing, the Jeff Hafley addition and then change is, I think, what caused the Packers to value someone like Xavier McKinney and pay him at the top of the market. It is what incentivized them. They were going to need the bodies at safety anyway, total. But the Packers had just not valued this position that way really in a long time. I mean, you can say Darnell Savage, they used a first-round pick on Darnell Savage after they went out and paid Adrian Amos. But that Amos contract was nowhere near the top of the safety market. Xavier McKinney was, if he had signed that contract a week earlier, I think Antoine Winfield Jr. maxed out the market. But otherwise, Xavier McKinney would have been paid at the top of the market. We're talking about premium assets being used on Xavier McKinney. And then you go out and you use a second-round pick on Javon Bullard. You get Evan Williams, who, by the way, also has an interception. Xavier McKinney has 3 interceptions. So just those new additions have 4 picks. You make those additions, or at least the Xavier McKinney acquisition. That's only made because you have Jeff Hafley and you believe he can be a transformative player in your defense. You can't run a single high defense if you don't have a post safety that can make the kind of plays that Xavier McKinney made at the end of that game, roaming from not just deep middle, he's far hash deep middle, and he gets to the opposite sidelines to a Will Levis go ball. And Will Levis can sling it. Like this, it was not some popcorn throw. And he got there, and it's because he's got instincts. He's got a great understanding of space and awareness of the movement of players, the geometry of players. I know I don't want to make it seem like a math problem too much, but there is a feel, an intuitive feel of, okay, that guy's moving that fast. The ball's going this way. I need to go get to that spot. It is geometry in a way. He's a 4'6" guy. The Packers never would have drafted him, and yet he's been a vital piece of this team. And then you look at someone like Eric Wilson. He's someone that Jeff Hafley has raved about. He got an opportunity to play a more traditional defensive role to open the season. I think Edgerrin Cooper's injury played a role in that as well. but then he makes a terrific play on an interception. That's Jeff Hafley having belief in a guy. So if I'm going to assign the pie here, it has to be the most Jeff Hafley. But Brian Gutekunst did go out and get Xavier McKinney, and he did go out and get Evan Williams, and he did go out and get Javon Bullard, and he'd already drafted Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine and Jair Alexander, and he did go out and get Edgerrin Cooper, and he'd already drafted Rashawn Gary and Devontae Wyatt and signed Preston Smith and Carl Brooks and all of these guys. Now, some of the deficiencies are also at the feet of Brian Gutekunst. The problems with linebacker, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie in particular, that have not been great. And defending in the middle of the field is going to be a big story this week against the Minnesota Vikings, something we are going to talk about. But we can't ignore the personnel here. We can't ignore the fact that Brian Gutekunst has put together a really good defensive roster. The thing is it was a really good defensive roster, we thought, last year and the year before that and the year before that potentially. And so it's like, okay, well, then at a certain point, is it really all that good? And I think the answer is, with really good coaching, it is. Now, let's also not forget the opponent. The Packers got a trio of interceptions against Anthony Richardson. He leads the league in interceptions. He's got 6 through 3 games. He had 3 against the Packers. The second most intercepted quarterback this year is Will Levis. Okay? And the third most intercepted quarterback this year is Jalen Hurts. Now, yes, the Packers playing those guys, like Anthony Richardson had 3 against the Packers, had 3 in those 2 other games. So the Packers matched his total in 2 other games in 1 game. That's true. Will Levis has had some of the most incomprehensible fumbles and interceptions in the league since he entered it. And Jalen Hurts can't stop turning the ball over. Now, he played a clean game against the Falcons-ish. Had an interception in that one. Had an interception in the red zone this last week. And threw 2 interceptions against the Packers, almost threw a pick 6. Now, his worst game was against the Packers, but he's throwing interceptions against everyone. So we have to remember, too, that part of defensive metrics is your opponent. This Packers team, when you really dig into it, and we talked about this, and I want to be upfront about this. I don't think it's a bad thing that this team is going to be reliant on playmaking and splash plays. Because when you look at this Packers defense, by EPA per play, they are 9th right now. We're recording this as the Monday night games are underway. I don't think the Monday night games are going to affect where these games are, though the Bills just ahead of the Packers. And so right now they are kicking the crap out of the Jaguars. We'll see if that holds. But okay, 9th in EPA per play, but they're 21st in success rate, which means down to down, play to play. They're having some consistency issues. Packers are 11th in dropback EPA per play. They're 21st in dropback success rate, which is another way of saying they are allowing teams to complete some passes, but they're also getting these big negative plays. Now, the good news is they're 5th in rush EPA. That's good. That's what you want. Now, they're 15th in rush success rate, but that's a little less important to me, because if you're up there in the EPA, that means, number one, you're creating negative plays, which the Packers are. You're potentially creating fumbles. You look at some of the rushing plays, like the Will Levis play on 4th down, that is a rush. Stopping them on 4th down on a run play. Anthony Richardson, that is a rush. So that's big EPA. But it's just okay by success rate. I mean, it's obviously a win by success rate, but if you give up a 4-yard run, the success rate says, well, you lost based on success rate. So I tend to like EPA per play in the aggregate, because I do think a team's ability to create these negative plays matter, especially when it is a feature of the defense to be a little bit volatile, to create some of these negative plays. And they've been able to do it through 3 games against 3 different quality teams. Like, I think the Colts and the Titans are pretty bad, but the Eagles are pretty good. And they've found different levels of success against those defensively. The run defense has been better than you would think. Now, part of that, again, is these high leverage moments. This is one of the best third down defenses in the league. But when you have playmakers like Jair Alexander and Xavier McKinney, and you have a pass rush like we saw get unleashed on Sunday, when you can penetrate and create these negative explosives for your team, you can live in this world where you're trying to create, in a lot of ways, it's what Joe Barry wanted to be, minus the variance. He thought, okay, if I can go 12 plays, 80 yards, I think we can create one negative play on that drive. Well, the Packers are trying to create those negative plays, but they're being more aggressive trying to create them. And it's working. It's working. Now, the Packers are going to have some decisions to make offensively with how much they want to change this offense that is right now third in the league in DVOA. Third, without their starting quarterback for 2 weeks. How are they going to adapt to having Jordan Love back? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find a quality professional that's right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And that's because LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. When we talked about adapting this offense last week to a potentially encumbered Jordan Love, what we mentioned was the offense is not going to actually have to change that much. And what I meant was, depending on the quarterback, you're going to have to ask it to do the same things functionally, structurally, because they're not going to be able to run it down Tennessee's throat right up the middle as effectively as you did against the Indianapolis Colts. And you're going to have to get to more shotgun play action. And so even if you're going to live out of the shotgun, you're going to have to expand the menu. And you're going to have to expand the menu of passes you're willing to throw from the gun, which you can do if you have Jordan Love, and you have to do if you're going to play Malik Willis. So the great example of this, and we talked about this a little bit on the live show, is the first third down of the game. It's 3rd and 6 out of a 3-by-1, I believe it was. And they asked Christian Watson, inside receiver. He's running a slot fade. The Packers love to do this. Aaron Rodgers loved to do this, but the Packers still, on third downs, Jordan Love is like that. Matt LaFleur seems to be like that. They call these shot plays on third down. And I wonder if they hadn't hit this, if they would have gone for it, because they were at the 36. If that's a 53-yard field goal in the opening drive, you might just say, we have a play for this. Let's just get to it. But he throws a dot to Christian Watson. And you see on 3rd and 14, he rips the inbreaker to Romeo Doubs. He rips the deep over to Christian Watson on 3rd and 18. Those are plays Jordan Love would have made. Now, I don't know how limited Jordan Love is going to be mobility-wise. When you watch that pregame warm-up, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty mobile, pretty agile. I don't know that you need to do a lot. I think they were very conservative with him, and I think not only will he play this week, by the way, Vegas thinks he's going to play Packers. It opened -3. I believe it's 2.5 right now. That Vikings game, very impressive. We have plenty of time this week to talk about the Vikings. We got Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings coming later in the week, of course, too. And so they did a lot of the things. I was surprised how much they let Malik Willis just go play quarterback. What I wonder is, okay, Jordan Love, you haven't been in there running these, pirouetting, timing run calls where you're running versions of single wing concepts that are, 70, 80 years old, but he's never run them. Now, he did get some team reps. Matt LaFleur revealed that yesterday. There were some team reps late in the week that he got, and maybe they were just testing him out. Like, hey, we might run these concepts. So if we're going to run them, you got to know how to do it. They were able to put it in for Malik Willis. So I assume Jordan Love is not going to have a problem. And then everyone else knows what to do. Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, Bo Melton, Jaden Reed, like those guys know what to do. You have these easy buttons to press. Keep pressing them. Don't think that because Jordan Love comes back, and this happened in 2019, and I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't know how much of that is Aaron Rodgers and how much of that is Matt LaFleur. Did Matt LaFleur pull back on some of the interesting special use, special calls that he had? That 2019 season is a great example because they didn't have Devontae Adams, and there were games where they're playing like with no NFL receivers. And then they get Devontae back, and it's all your traditional drop back, all the same stuff that you were running before, where it's like, could you still use Aaron Jones in some of these interesting ways? Like, could you still call some of this other cool pony personnel stuff? And they did and they didn't, to varying degrees. Some of these plays were so useful, so good, so effective. The Titans in this game tried to steal multiple calls. In fact, on the very first play, the Packers went shotgun play action. Hello. Shotgun play action. They totally got Kenneth Murray to bite, and they get Jaden Reed for a 30-yard catch and run, wide open. Later in the game, the Titans tried to run the same concept. Fake the shotgun pitch, and you try to sneak, I think it was a tight end on that play, across the middle of the field where your linebacker, you're hoping takes 2 steps the wrong way, and all of a sudden you got a guy running, it's a runaway the other direction. Isaiah McDuffie played it perfectly, but these concepts, teams are going to try and take. Can you keep using them? Can you find ways to evolve them? And the great example is the throwback. The Emmanuel Wilson touchdown, it's the pirouetting, old school single wing, it's orbit motion, which by the way is also not new. People act like it is new. I mean, we play, anyone who's ever seen a high school football game, when I was in high school, we played against teams that were in these like wishbone, and you've got this back going in motion behind the quarterback. Not new. Malik Willis pirouettes, fakes the handoff to Bo Melton on the orbit motion, and then you get the throwback screen to Emmanuel Wilson. Did they get to all the plays off the play? Or is there more? Do they have more to show? Can they keep evolving this run game? I now have more faith in Matt LaFleur than I have ever had in his ability to dial up these sorts of run concepts. And it sort of makes you wonder why we didn't see them more. Like when this run game was sputtering last year, why did we not see more of this sort of like, let's get crazy? Now, maybe, I think most likely, it's that these guys couldn't handle the regular stuff. Like these were rookies. These were first-year players, second-year players. They were first-year starters. And so, could they have really done some of this stuff then? Probably not, frankly. But they can do it now. And so you have to find that balance. It's like a basketball player who is a great slasher, can just get to the basket at will, but they work on their jumper all offseason. You have to find that balance. You have to find that balance of hitting that jumper, using that jumper, but don't forget that you're a driver of the basketball. Now, this is kind of the opposite, where they did this one thing really effectively, but don't forget that you can do that other thing. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Don't forget you have this other thing in your bag. We just saw you beat the daylights out of 2 NFL teams with creative, exotic calls. And then, of course, just like man-to-man beating some of these other guys, like Christian Watson just getting open on a deep over, and Romeo Dobbs just getting open on a deep inbreaker. Just like a deep dig, you just rip it. Jordan Love's going to be able to do that stuff. Slot fade on 3rd and 6. Yeah, that's normal. You can do that. The Packers are going to do that. How do you balance all this cool run stuff with finding ways? Jordan Love, is he going to play under center? Can you get to more under center play action? Do you have interesting run stuff to call under center? I imagine they do. They have, I assume, a whole big Jordan Love all off season of work trying to find stuff. Now it's almost like you've raised the bar. And so let's see something. I'm trying to see something, Matt LaFleur. Let's see it. And I have faith that he can do it, because the two best coaching jobs that we've seen through 3 weeks in the NFL have been authored by the coaches we are going to see on the sidelines on Sunday at Lambeau Field. It's Kevin O'Connell and it's Matt LaFleur. Those have been the two best coaching jobs in the NFL through 3 weeks. Show a little hubris. Show a little arrogance. Show a little pride. And say, look, put that thing on the table and say, I'm the big dog around here. I'm the best at this. Watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Speaking of watching, our pal Tyler Rowland, he was bummed after the game, I have to say. He was there with his family. By the way, shout out some of his family. They're some of his, I don't know if it's extended family or I forget exactly, but they're Packer fans. So shout out to them. And shout out to the people. Tyler told me he was out in Nashville on Saturday night and he had a handful, not just like one or two, a handful of people, like 5 people, he said, come up to him and say, hey man, I saw you on Locked On Packers. You were great. Or just come up and said, hey, I like the show. Saw you on Locked On Packers. You guys are awesome for doing that. Thank you so much. The Locked On Podcast Network is an awesome community, and people like Tyler are proof of that. He has an apology from Malik Willis, and he would like to share that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you have a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I saw it on Sunday. It's a really cool feature where you can just click and go, oh, cool, what's going on here? And you can place live bets. It's a great way to get in on those live bets. Oh, I'm not following this game exactly. Let me check my bets. Oh, that's interesting. Let me add this. Let me try this. You'll get started with $200 right now in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You could place a bet on, let's say, the Packers -2.5 to win this football game. And here's something I thought was interesting. The Packers are plus 2,400 to win the Super Bowl right now today. That is roughly what they were in the preseason. In fact, I think I bet them at 24-1, maybe 26-1 to win the Super Bowl before the year, which means the odds makers think they're about as good now as we thought they were before the season, when a lot of people thought they were the first, second, third best team in the NFC. I don't think a lot has changed. They're FanDuel.com to get a look at the odds right now and get that bonus bet guaranteed. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. Now for your second listen, go listen to Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. A lot of people have had to eat a lot of crow about Malik Willis. Some national voices, national podcast hosts, former players like Taylor Lewan, a former teammate of Malik Willis, out there with some wild slander of Malik Willis. He's a nice guy, but he just doesn't know ball. He ate it. Mea culpa. He said, look, I was wrong. Malik's been great. I've never had a good quarterback take. I love to see that. A lot of other people did not take the L as diplomatically, but they did recognize it. I appreciated that. But our pal Tyler Rowland, he was pretty optimistic when we talked to him 2 weeks ago. When we found out it was going to be Malik Willis to start in week 2, we had Tyler Rowland on this show. Everydayers will remember this. And he pitched a pretty optimistic view of what Malik Willis could be. And later on Twitter kind of walked it back and said he's Justin Fields, but worse. Well, Justin Fields and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0. He's made a couple of really nice plays, has not hurt them, and the defense won those games. Malik Willis has made 3 or 4 plays in each of one of these games, and the defense has done the rest. And the run game, of course. But the run game in Pittsburgh, same thing. The Packers are scoring more points. They've been better. And so I didn't ask Tyler to do this. He did this on his show. One of his segments. He set out. This was not just some stream of consciousness thing. He set out to apologize to Malik Willis and to admit he was wrong.
Malik Willis, I am sorry. I'm sorry, Malik Willis. I apologize. I was wrong about you. I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. Malik Willis, I have said Malik Willis is not an NFL player. I have said Malik Willis should go to the XFL. I've said a lot of things about Malik Willis, and I've hated on Malik Willis quite a bit. And I think that the reality is my view of Malik Willis came from Malik Willis's time with the Titans. And in my mind, from what I saw from Malik Willis, he was all the things I said. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't an NFL player. But look, but once again, like I was just saying at the end of our last conversation, the reality is it was the Titans organization that was bad, not Malik Willis. Malik Willis is a fine backup quarterback. Malik Willis is 2-0 with the Packers. Malik Willis executed flawlessly. Not only did Malik Willis execute flawlessly with what he was asked to do, but he made plays. How many times did Malik Willis escape the Titans' pressure and make a play with his legs in a big situation? So not only did he do what he was asked, he did more than that. I was there. You know who the better football player is? You know who the better quarterback is? Malik Willis. Malik Willis is a better football player than Will Levis. I don't know how we can argue it right now. One player has 3 weeks in a row hurt his football team. If the Titans had Malik Willis at quarterback, they would have won the first 2 games because Malik Willis would not have made the critical mistakes. But the reality is Matt LaFleur is just such a superior coach to Brian Callahan right now. The Packers organization is such a superior organization to the Tennessee Titans that it is no surprise that all it took was Malik Willis to change jerseys and he turned into a really competent backup. Now, I don't think Malik Willis will ever be a starter in like a certified starter in the NFL. Like you're going into the season with Malik Willis as your starting quarterback, and that's the plan. I think he's going to be a backup. But I think Will Levis is a backup too. And I think that Malik Willis is a better backup than Will Levis. And I cannot believe that that's where I'm at. But after watching Malik Willis the last 2 weeks, watching Will Levis, but then also, if Will Levis played for the Packers, he'd probably look like freaking Peyton Manning, right? Right? It's probably not all Will Levis. It's just that he plays for this team, the Titans, the Canadian Football League version of the NFL. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know exactly. I'm sure that Will Levis would be better with a different team, not this organization. But at the same time, he'd probably still be a turnover machine. He'd probably still give the game away. So I don't know how you could watch what we just saw and not just be over the moon impressed by Malik Willis. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a high school game plan and it's this and that and blah, blah. No, he did exactly what he needed to do. He ran a perfect game plan. Malik Willis was great in this game. And again, the Packers had some drops where think about some of those 3rd and longs. Malik Willis didn't run. There was a couple fans behind me, Titans fans, who kept saying, all he can do is run. No, he proved you wrong. Malik Willis stood in the pocket, went through his progressions, and delivered accurate footballs on time to his receivers for big explosive plays in disadvantageous situations. Malik Willis was far better than Will Levis in this game. And Malik Willis's last 2 games have been better than any game Will Levis played this year. That's the facts.
We love that. Always love an excuse to get Tyler on the show. Again, unfortunately, the Packers only play the Titans once, and they're not going to play him in the Super Bowl. We know that for damn sure. Back tomorrow. We got Zhao Yu doing Lily Zhao. Thursday, crossover Thursday. Interview coming on Friday. We're going to have a lot of fun this week. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live like we were after the game, we're going to be live after the game this week. Go subscribe over on our YouTube page. Subscribe on all of the social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, so you can stay Locked On Packers.